Nobody in Millfield thought Owen Callaway would last long as a single father. Too quiet, too steady, too ordinary. So when Diana Voss, owner of 3 dealerships and a reputation built on crushing smaller people, decided to have some fun, she chose Owen's driveway. 12 rusted, broken, engine-dead cars appeared overnight. A gift from Diana and her circle, deliberately meant to be a punchline, meant to bury him in debt and shame. What Diana didn't know was what Owen had spent 15 years hiding: not just how to fix cars, but how to own the people who broke them. Press play right now and find out how one quiet father turned 12 junkers into the deal of a lifetime. Owen Callaway woke at 5:30 every morning without an alarm. He moved through the house in a particular order. Coffee first, then oatmeal on the stove, then 3 quiet knocks on the door at the end of the hallway. The knocks were never louder than necessary. And Bonnie always answered them the same way. A small groan, then the shuffle of feet, then the door opening to reveal a 7-year-old with tangled hair and serious eyes. Their house on Cartmel Road was a singlestory with a narrow front yard and a garage that held more tools than it did cars. The neighbors who had lived on that street long enough knew that Owen kept to himself, paid his bills on time, and never asked for anything. The ones who hadn't lived there long assumed he was simply unremarkable. Neither group was entirely right. Owen had been in Millfield for 7 years, long enough that most people had stopped wondering about him, which was exactly how he preferred it. He had a few routines, a few friendships that did not require much maintenance, and a daughter who had inherited in equal measure his quietness and his way of watching things before deciding what to think about them. Bonnie was the kind of child who asked one precise question, where other children asked 5 imprecise ones. Owen answered her questions with the same seriousness he brought to everything else which had produced by the time she was 7. A girl with an unusually accurate picture of how the world worked and a deep preference for honesty over comfort. The garage told a different story if anyone had known how to read it. Along the back wall hung tools on a pegboard, each one in its exact place, each one worn smooth from years of use. On the floor beside the workbench sat a metal toolbox painted red, or what had once been red, now a faded rust orange, where the paint had chipped and aged. It had belonged to Owen's father. And before that, to no one Owen knew of, Bonnie was not allowed to touch it, though she sat on top of it nearly every evening while her father worked, swinging her legs and asking questions he almost always answered. Owen worked as a mechanic at the community garage on Miller Street, fixing trucks and lawn equipment and the occasional water pump for whoever needed it. The pay covered what they needed and not much else. He did not complain about this. He did not seem to notice it. On a Tuesday morning in early October, his neighbor Lucas came around before 8 with 2 cups of gas station coffee and the look of someone who had heard something worth repeating. Lucas was a broad-shouldered man with calloused hands and a habit of arriving unannounced, which Owen had long since stopped minding. They sat on the front steps while Bonnie ate inside. Lucas said that Diana Voss had been making moves on the land along Cartmel Road, specifically the parcels between the hardware store and the old feed lot, which happened to include the lot Owen was sitting on. Owen listened without interrupting. When Lucas finished, Owen said only that he was not selling. Lucas nodded like he'd expected that answer, and the 2 men finished their coffee without saying much else. Before she left for school that morning, Bonnie took her father's hand on the front steps, and looked up at him with the particular seriousness she reserved for important questions. She asked why people always looked at them the way they did, the sideways glances, the polite silences that lasted a beat too long. Owen looked at her and said it was because they didn't know who he was yet. Bonnie accepted this and they walked to the car. Diana Voss had built her reputation the way certain people build walls, one deliberate stone at a time, placed to keep things out as much as to hold things up. She had inherited one dealership from her father 8 years earlier and turned it into 3, pushing her annual revenue past $40 million through a combination of precise financial maneuvering and a talent for identifying when someone else's weakness was her opportunity. Her offices occupied the top floor of the Voss Auto Group headquarters on Renfield Avenue. Glass walls, steel fixtures, and framed magazine covers arranged in a line that read like a timeline of her ambitions being realized. She was not a loud person. She had learned early that volume was what people used when they lacked precision, and precision was the thing she had in abundance. Her assistant Jessica had worked for her for 2 years and had absorbed through careful observation the most important rule of the office. Diana's silences were never empty. They were loaded. She was the kind of person who made other people feel that the room became smaller when she entered it. Not through intimidation exactly, but through a quality of attention that suggested she was always calculating something, and that the calculation would eventually produce a result that was inconvenient for whoever had miscalculated in her presence. The staff at all 3 dealerships knew this. The suppliers knew it. The local officials who attended Diana's quarterly breakfasts knew it best of all. The 4th dealership had been Diana's plan for 3 years. The location on Cartmel Road sat at the intersection of Route 9 and the approach to the new commercial development going up on the east side of Millfield, the kind of geography that a person in Diana's business did not find twice. She had offered fair prices through 2 separate brokers. Most of the landowners along that corridor had accepted. Owen Callaway had declined both offers without explanation, which Diana found more interesting than annoying. She told Jessica to find out who he was. The report came back thin. Mechanic, single father, quiet life, no apparent financial ambitions. Diana read it twice, set it down, and said that if a man had no ambitions, there was usually something else keeping him in place, something they hadn't found yet. She told Jessica to arrange a different kind of conversation, the kind that didn't require a broker. What followed was not spontaneous. It required a flatbed company, 4 separate towing services operating across a single overnight window, and a man in the county assessor's office who owed Diana a favor. 12 vehicles were sourced from salvage lots and impound auctions across 3 counties, chosen specifically because each one had already been rejected by repair shops, tagged beyond economical repair, stripped of value in the official record. The cost of the operation to Diana was under $4,000. The vehicles were deposited in 2 rows along Owen Callaway's front drive before 5 in the morning while the neighborhood slept. Each one bore a handwritten sign that read "For Scrap Sale," and each sign was stamped with the name of a different failed repair shop, as though Owen had been collecting them. Owen came outside at 6:15 to get the newspaper and stopped at the edge of the porch. He stood there long enough for the coffee to cool in his hand. Bonnie appeared beside him a few minutes later, rubbing her eyes, and looked at the 2 rows of rusted, broken, deflated, shattered vehicles filling the driveway from the gate to the street. She asked if someone had given them cars. Owen said nothing for a moment. Then Lucas appeared from across the yard, moving fast, because Lucas had seen the trucks come in the night before and had not known what to do with what he had witnessed. He told Owen what he had seen. Owen listened with the same expression he wore for most things. Still attentive, without visible alarm, the neighborhood was waking up. A few people had already stopped on the sidewalk. Phones were out. Within the hour, a local message group had posted a photograph of the driveway with a caption that the people who had arranged all of this found very satisfying. A woman who lived 2 doors down leaned against her mailbox and shook her head. A man walking his dog slowed down, took a photograph, and kept walking. A teenager on a bicycle circled the block twice. None of them knocked on Owen's door to ask if he was all right. In fairness, they would not have known how to frame the question. It was the kind of spectacle that produced commentary more easily than compassion, and Millfield was not unlike most towns in that regard. A patrol officer named Greer came by mid-morning and filled out a report while Owen explained calmly and without irritation that he had not requested these vehicles, had not arranged their delivery, and had no knowledge of where they had originated. Officer Greer wrote everything down, and said he would look into it. What he did not say was that he had received a call the night before from the city manager's office where a certain account of events had already been established, one in which Owen Callaway was described as having begun unauthorized accumulation of salvaged vehicles on a residential property in violation of municipal zoning code. By noon, Owen had received a formal notice from the Department of Urban Management. He had 30 days to clear the property or face a compliance review and possible asset freeze. Owen read the letter at the kitchen table while Bonnie finished her lunch. Then he folded it, set it in the drawer with the utility bills, and went out to the garage. He walked the length of both rows of vehicles slowly, flashlight in hand, stopping at each one. He crouched beside certain cars for longer than others. He knocked on frames with 2 knuckles. He pressed his palm flat against chassis metal and listened. Bonnie watched from the porch. When Owen reached the 8th car in the 2nd row, a battered shell of a vehicle that had been painted over so many times its original color was impossible to guess. He was still for a long time. On his way back inside, he stopped at the edge of the driveway and bent down to pick up a small stone from the gravel. He turned it over once in his fingers and put it in the pocket of his jacket. Lucas, who had been watching all of this from the fence, did not ask why. He had learned over years of friendship that Owen's actions clarified themselves eventually. That evening, Owen did not call a lawyer. He did not go to the city manager's office. He did not post anything publicly or ask anyone for sympathy. He went to the phone and called a man named Adrian, who worked in automotive consulting out of Chicago and who had known Owen a long time. Owen described each vehicle in turn: engine condition, chassis response, body damage, frame integrity with the calm specificity of someone reading from a well-organized report. He was 7 cars in when Adrian interrupted him. He asked Owen to describe the 8th car again. Owen did. There was a silence on the line that lasted several seconds. Then Adrian asked very quietly whether the frame on the 8th car was original. Owen said he had checked it. Adrian said something that sounded like a prayer and Owen said he had already made note of that one. He told Adrian he would be in touch and hung up the phone. Later that night, after Bonnie was asleep and the house was quiet, Owen sat at the kitchen table with a pad of paper and went through each car from memory, writing a number beside each one. He did not share these numbers with anyone. He put the paper in the drawer with the utility bills and the compliance notice, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed. In the morning, he pulled the first car into the garage and opened the hood. He worked with the kind of efficiency that comes not from hurry, but from certainty, knowing exactly what a problem is before beginning to address it so that no motion is wasted. The Honda sedan went in on a Wednesday and came out on Friday. Clean interior, new brake pads, fresh transmission fluid, engine running without hesitation. Owen listed it on the local marketplace for $3,800 and answered the first inquiry within the hour. It sold before noon. The Chevy truck took 3 days and needed a valve job, which Owen completed without sending out for parts because he had ordered them Tuesday. That one sold for $5,200. Lucas helped where Owen directed him, which mostly meant handing tools and holding things in place, which Lucas did without complaint because he understood by now that something was happening here that he did not fully grasp, but that he trusted completely. Diana received a report from Jessica on Friday afternoon. Owen Callaway had sold 2 cars. Diana was not concerned. She had sent 12. Even if he managed to move all of them, which she considered unlikely, she still held the compliance notice, the city manager's goodwill, and the zoning review scheduled for the end of the month. She told Jessica to file an anonymous complaint with the county environmental office, citing potential illegal disposal of motor oil on residential land. The environmental inspector arrived the following Tuesday. Owen walked him through the garage, pointed out the oil containment system he had installed years earlier, a gravity-fed basin with a sealed drum collector, well within code, technically above the minimum standard. The inspector signed off and left. Diana received that report, too. She told Jessica to escalate. Jessica, who had learned not to ask about the ethics of the things she was asked to do, made the calls. The escalation came in the form of a notice from the city licensing office. Owen had been selling vehicles from a residential address, which potentially required a dealer's license. Without one, each additional sale could carry a fine of $500 per transaction. Owen received this notice on a Thursday and called Carter Webb the same afternoon. Carter was a lawyer who specialized in vehicle commerce and property law, and he had been referred by Adrian. Carter reviewed the situation and told Owen 3 things. First, that individual private citizens were permitted to sell up to 5 personal vehicles per calendar year without a dealer's license. Second, that the 2 cars Owen had already sold were within that limit. And third, that Carter could obtain a temporary dealer permit for Owen within 10 business days, which would cover any sales beyond the personal threshold for the remainder of the year. Owen told Carter to file for the permit. Carter said he would have it by the following Wednesday. Owen thanked him and went back to the garage. That evening, Bonnie showed Owen a drawing she had made at school. 12 cars lined up in a row with a tall figure standing beside them holding a toolbox. The teacher had asked the class to draw something important that happened recently. Bonnie said the teacher had asked what the figure in the drawing was doing. Bonnie had said he was counting his money. Owen looked at the drawing for a moment, then folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. The 3rd through 6th cars came out in 9 days. Owen worked in the evenings after Bonnie went to sleep and on weekend mornings before she woke up. He kept a notebook on the workbench where he logged every part ordered, every hour worked, every dollar spent. Lucas came by most evenings and did what he was asked. Adrian began sourcing parts from his Chicago network, shipping them on 2-day delivery when the local suppliers didn't carry what Owen needed. The Jeep went for $6,400. The Ford pickup, which needed more work than the others, but had a cleaner frame than anyone would have guessed from the exterior, went for $7,800 to a contractor outside of town who needed it the same week. A Volkswagen sedan, which had more wrong with it than Owen initially assessed, sold for $3,500, the only car that came in below his projected number, which Owen noted in his log without complaint. A BMW 3 Series from 2009 needed a rebuilt alternator, 2 new control arms, and fresh tires, but the body panels were straight, and the interior was intact. Owen listed it for $9,200 and received 4 inquiries the first morning. He sold it to the second caller after asking 2 questions. Whether the buyer intended to drive it daily, and whether they had a reliable mechanic. The buyer said yes to both. Owen said the car would serve them well. Then there was the 8th car, the one Adrian had gone quiet about on the phone. Owen had known from the moment he crouched beside it in the dark that first night that it was a different category of problem from the others. Not a problem in the sense of difficulty, but in the sense of significance. The vehicle had been buried under 4 poorly applied layers of paint, its interior gutted and its windshield gone. And whoever had left it at an impound lot in Benton County had clearly had no idea what they were discarding. Owen had spent 20 minutes on it that first night without touching it. Just looking, moving his flashlight slowly across the body lines, pressing 2 fingers against the firewall, listening. He had sent Adrian 40 photographs the following morning. And Adrian, a man who had spent 20 years in this industry and who was not given to overstatement, had called back within the hour and used language that Owen did not normally associate with him. A collector in Chicago, a man Adrian had worked with for years, paid $38,000 for it without negotiating and arranged transport the same week. When the transfer was complete, Adrian called Owen and said that whoever had dumped those cars in his driveway had made a very expensive mistake. Owen said that was one way to put it. While Owen worked, he had also begun to read, not about cars, about Voss Auto Group. He pulled the business registration filings, the annual tax disclosures that were publicly accessible, and the records from 2 commercial real estate transactions Diana had made in the previous 5 years. Carter helped him navigate the financial documents, translating the accounting into plain terms. What they found was not catastrophic, but it was not comfortable either. Voss Auto was carrying $4.20 $2 million in commercial debt with Meridian Bank. Structured as a variable rate loan taken out 3 years earlier to finance the expansion from 2 dealerships to 3, the rate had adjusted upward twice in the past year. More importantly, the loan agreement contained a performance covenant quarterly sales benchmarks that if missed for 2 consecutive periods gave the bank the right to renegotiate terms or place the account on a watch list. Diana's first quarter had come in 18% below target. Her second quarter had not recovered. The third quarter was 3 weeks from closing. Owen wrote all of this down in a second notebook, not the parts log, but a different one kept in the drawer of his bedroom nightstand. He did not discuss it with Lucas. He mentioned it to Carter only in the form of a single question. Whether a commercial loan could be sold by a bank to a private buyer at a discount if the bank wished to reduce its portfolio risk.